Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. In the wake of the mass murder of 19 children and 2 adults in Uvalde, Texas, Canada is taking action against gun violence. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced he is introducing legislation that would put a, quote, national freeze on the sale of handguns. He says he does not want his country to become like the United States.
And unfortunately, the reality is, in our country, it is getting worse and has been getting worse over the past years. We need only look south of the border to know that if we do not take action firmly and rapidly, it gets worse and worse and more difficult to counter. That's why, as of this moment, or as of the passage of this legislation, it will be illegal to buy, sell, import, or transfer handguns in this country.
Something pretty striking about that phrase he used, right? South of the border to describe us, the United States. It's a phrase you hear so often in this country by people who are kind of denigrating Mexico as a supposedly lawless land of, ultra-violence. That's how they see us. And Canada, notably, has a relatively high rate of gun ownership. I mean, as we have established, while no country anywhere in the world comes anywhere near the astounding 120 guns per 100 residents in the United States, Canada is the next closest highly developed country. There are about 35 guns per capita in Canada. It's the 5th highest rate in the world after Yemen and Montenegro and Serbia. And also, there's a real gun culture in Canada. Hunting is popular. They have gun shows, pro-gun rights group fighting gun control measures called the National Firearms Association. So Canada's probably our closest analog, not just in terms of guns, right? We have a lot in common politically and socially as predominantly English-speaking neighbors in the Western Hemisphere. But they're doing it. They are doing what we just cannot seem to. In addition to banning handguns, Canada is planning to ban the possession of assault weapons with a mandatory buyback program. That comes on top of a ban Canada already implemented on the use and sale of many semi-automatic rifles, including the AR-15, after 22 people were killed in a mass shooting in Nova Scotia in 2020. And of course, it's not limited just to Canada. It is striking to compare the United States to other members of its wealthy English-speaking cohort. United Kingdom, New Zealand, Australia, and Canada. All those places, including the U.S., are either part of Britain or former colonies, share language, many institutional features, in some case, a media culture, thanks to Rupert Murdoch. We also share a legal background and tradition, common law. And we have also all experienced horrifying mass shootings like the one in Uvalde. But unlike us, those other countries all acted in the wake of them quickly and swiftly to prevent that horror from occurring again. It happened in England in 1987 when a gunman there killed 16 people in the small village of Hungerford.
Residents were shocked. Many of them knew the gunman, Michael Ryan, a 27-year-old father of 4 who collected weapons. Witnesses said Ryan was dressed in combat fatigues and carrying 3 guns when he walked up the town's main street and opened fire on the lunchtime crowds. These are scenes the British never expected to see in their own country, where civility is still the norm and where violence is so rare only 1 policeman in 10 carries a gun.
I didn't think that this type of violence would happen in Britain. It's the sort of thing you usually hear about in the papers in America.
Well, the British government wanted it to stay that way, and so the following year they passed new legislation requiring shotguns to be registered, banning most semi-automatic and pump-action weapons. Sadly, it was not enough to prevent another horrific massacre, this one of 16 kindergartners and their teacher in Dunblane, Scotland in 1996.
Parents ran through the streets of Dunblane, rushing to find out if their children were still alive. Shortly after school began, Thomas Hamilton, a man described by neighbors as an unpopular loner, burst into the primary school's gymnasium. He was carrying 4 handguns.
So the government went a step further, banned all handguns. Well, the UK has seen some mass shootings since then. Gun violence significantly dropped, and there has not been a single school shooting in the country. The same year as Dunblane, 1996, Australia was rocked by a mass shooting in Tasmania where 35 people were killed.
The massacre had begun at this cafe in the Port Arthur settlement. 20 tourists killed in the space of a few minutes. Outside, the gunman then sprayed a bus with bullets, killing 4 more. An amateur cameraman captured the scene as visitors huddled for cover. As Australia prepares to mourn the victims, there have been urgent calls for tough new gun laws to try and ensure it never happens again.
So like in the UK, the Australian government answered those calls immediately. In just 12 days, they passed a law outlawing automatic and semi-automatic rifles and pump-action shotguns. They also implemented a buyback program where Australians turned in hundreds of thousands of weapons. A 2011 study found that Australia's firearm homicide rate declined by 57% in the 7 years after the law was passed. And most recently, it happened in New Zealand when 51 people were killed in Christchurch.
It was no accident that New Zealand's deadliest terrorist attack began around 1:45 in the afternoon. A gunman storming the Al Noor Mosque when it was packed with hundreds of Muslims performing Friday afternoon prayers.
I could hear screaming and crying, and I saw some people were, drop dead.
A shocking act of evil that rattled the conscience of the nation. And just days after the massacre, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announced a ban on semi-automatic weapons. And weeks later, the New Zealand Parliament voted to make the ban permanent. Today, Jacinda Ardern met with President Joe Biden at the White House, where the president told her the United States needs her help.
We need your guidance, and it's a pleasure to see you in person. You understand that your leadership has taken on a critical role in this global stage. The global effort to confront violence, extremism, and online, like happened at Christchurch, Nicole, and we I want to work with you on that effort. And I want to talk to you about what those conversations are like, if you're willing.
U.S. politicians seem to be paralyzed just forever, unable to do anything after mass shooting and mass shooting. But again, that has not always been the case, right? The sort of pattern you see, the sort of strike to the conscience, the horror, the visceral anguish, we've seen that before. Nearly 30 years ago, following a slew of traumatic shootings, the U.S. enacted an assault weapons ban. It happened in 1994. It was bipartisan. It was very popular. So popular, in fact, it was a wedge issue for Democrats. A 1993 poll found that 77% of Americans supported a ban on semi-automatic assault weapons. It was so popular, George W. Bush basically prevaricated about whether he was going to let it expire when he ran for re-election, and then he did. We left that ban expire after 10 years, and of course, there's been no meaningful action since then as the shootings go on, increasing in the frequency and the devastation. And gun violence in general has gone up considerably in this country in the last several years, as have gun sales. Now, there are a lot of ways that America is just different from other countries. But again, the question that still has not been answered is, what is it that makes us different on this issue? Not the Constitution and not the Second Amendment. I mean the politics. I mean, why are we not moved to action when our children are being murdered? Or as Sky News reporter put it to Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz, quote, why is this American exceptionalism so awful?
Why does this only happen in your country? I really think that's what many people around the world they cannot fathom. Why only in America? Why is this American exceptionalism so awful?
You know, I'm sorry you think American exceptionalism is awful.
I think this aspect of it.
You got your political agenda.
No, it's honestly,
God love you. Why is it that people come from all over the world to America? Because it's the freest, most prosperous, safest country on earth.
It may be the freest, it may be the most